Well, good morning, everybody. I think we're going to get rolling. It's not raining anymore. It's a little bit cold, so you can snuggle up with each other, find somebody that you like or you don't like, and get to know them a little bit better. But thanks for coming. It's always been a fun time getting the first crop walk going, and it seems that if you want crappy weather, just ask us to plan a crop walk. So, but actually, I think it was Lauren was telling me it's a lot better than last year's first crop walk. So we're going to get out in the field. We've got the trailer beside us here. I just want to make a few introductions for today's crop walk. It's going to be basically myself, Brian Beres, he's at the back here, and the new guy in green, Jamie Larson. So we'll start off here at our site, and we're going to look at some of Brian's winter wheat trials. We'll be looking at our pre-seed burn down night spraying trial, as well as the last year of our canola inter-row study. And we'll probably head over, we'll risk crossing the highway and head over to our irrigated site where we've got some plant growth regulator trial on winter wheat with Brian as well. And then I'm going to have everybody probably get in their vehicles, and we'll follow Jamie out to his sites just across the highway with Ag Canada, looking at some hybrid rye, fall rye. So thanks to all of our sponsors. We've actually got quite a few sponsor representatives here. We've got Lauren and Brian with the Wheat Commission, Sydney with the Pulse Commission. Who else is here? That's a
Winter
good
Cereals
sponsor.
Canada.
Winter Cereals Canada. Yeah, Ducks has been taking care of us too. And our I'm supposed to thank Mars Norris Penny. They sponsored the coffee and the donuts from the Coaldale Bakery today, so grab some coffee before you leave. And also we have Autumn and Sherry with the Canola Commission, and because they're here, and only because they're here, you have to wear booties in the field today. Just kidding. We have to wear it even if they weren't here, because I'm on camera. So at the door here, we've got the nice little boots. They'll help keep your pants clean in the mud anyways. It's actually not that bad.
Well, come on in closer if you can. What we'll do is we'll start here, and we're going to just take a look at some plots all the way down, and then we'll jump back on and go to another site. So in behind me here are a couple of experiments in relation to sort of this overall goal with winter wheat, where we wanted to update our integrated crop management practices with winter wheat. And the theme around a lot of it, based on feedback from growers, new growers, was stand establishment. That trouble of getting that stand established in the fall or maintaining that through the spring. The second issue was sort of a resurgence in brome in winter wheat. So we've, with the experiments that follow, we're addressing two of those topics. One with the chemistry and one with practices. So behind me here is sort of our take on, okay, you've had a bit of a wreck, and this is a pretty good year because Dale Hicks and I have been talking about the problem sort of prairie-wide. And you can ask him about the John Wayne quote later, but some of that is self-inflicted, but some of it perhaps not. And so what happens in a stand that's suboptimal? Well, that's opportunity for weeds. And so behind me here is an experiment where we had a series of chemistries that we were looking at, and sort of create that scenario of a low plant population. We seeded low. So for example, right here we have 150 seeds per square meter going in the ground in the fall. And the chemistry in this case is a new one, pyroxasulfone, that is starting to show quite a bit of promise for us with winter wheat. And what Ken and the guys did is they overseeded the plots with wild oats and cleavers. Now, winter wheat can be quite competitive with wild oats. We're not anticipating much because we haven't seen that as an issue, particularly in that higher seeding rate. The cleavers are a bit of a hit and miss, and Ken's got an example there that he found. But anyway, you'll see some interesting differences or not. And so the study here was, are there new chemistries out there in situations where you have a low plant population that might ensure, or are there pre-plant options such as a pyroxasulfone that would help in those situations where you do have a low plant population. So so you can see here we've got quite a bit of a difference when you have a low plant population for whatever reason versus a higher one. And we don't have the data yet on the effects of weeds, but you can see even with a fairly effective chemistry at a fairly high dose, you're still getting some weed presence. Whereas when you have that nice stand, you could then ask yourself, well, in this case, the chemistry was probably more of an insurance than anything else, similar to what we've reported with our seed treatment. So that's the background with this experiment, and both this one and the ones over there, this is our last year, so we'll have a nice data set to report on with this in relation to stand establishment and new chemistry. So if you'd like, we'll carry on. Ken's got two specimens there. One is Japanese brome, and the other's Downy Brome. So the one.
Pair of gloves to the person who can pick them out. Cold. Little one's Japanese. You're just guessing? All right, I'll get you some.
That's a pretty good guess, Dale.
Yeah.
So while Ken's showing you those, huh?
This is our third most prominent crop.
Yeah. So basically, if you think about the distribution area for the two, so we're sort of at a central point. If you drew a line down to the Montana border, to the southeast of us would be sort of a traditional distribution area for Downy. More towards the wetter areas, the more humid areas of southwestern Alberta would be the distribution area typically for Japanese brome, both of which have become somewhat problematic. And so this study here was one, well, are there any options out there, any new options, strategies, specifically related to managing them in winter wheat? And so the idea behind this study was timing and chemistry. So basically we have a range of chemistries, Everest, Simplicity, Velocity, and then a new tank mix, not new to us anyway. It's been used in corn and soybeans and such down east in a label called Fierce, but flumioxazin and pyroxasulfone, and then we've got them together as the regular label rate and formulation, but then we split them out as well, and with those chemistries we either applied in the fall or in the spring. Now with pyroxasulfone, it's a pre-plant, so it would only be going down in the fall, but the others we were juggling between spring and fall. And what's interesting is we've reported the last 2 years that when we're applying some of these chemistries in the fall, like I believe the most toxic one was probably the one I'm standing in front of, Everest, is that we were getting some injury, particularly in the fall, and that was translating into a bit of a yield hit the following year. But as you can see, if you look at both the stand and the control, here's our fall application, and you can see it in Simplicity as well. We had better control of Downy Brome this time with our fall application versus what the guys applied in spring. The really good news on this, though, is that the chemistry of pyroxasulfone is showing to be extremely effective in every year and at every location, and it's translating into higher and stable yield. So we've analyzed the data. Not only are you getting good weed control, which can be a multitude additive benefit over successive years, but it's translating into a yield. So in other words, it's paying for itself and then some. And we're playing around with dosage a little bit in some of these, but I believe it's the 112 rate is kind of the label rate, but even upwards of I think we went to 2 or 250. I'm really not seeing much injury until we get to that extremely high thing. So we can probably safely say that there's safety there as well. But the interesting thing is the tank mix of the flumioxazin and pyroxasulfone was actually resulting in lower and unstable yields for some reason relative to when you split out the chemistries and just have pyroxasulfone alone, or even the flumioxazin alone. So not sure exactly what's going on. It doesn't appear to be an injury thing or an efficacy thing, so have to look at that data a little bit more. But you can see for yourself if you have a look. Very good control, and that fall thing is kind of, we'll have to think about that, because up until now we were saying, the fall thing isn't really panning out that well, except maybe it was Everest that wasn't as bad. There was one that was not bad in the fall, but there was one that was causing injury or just wasn't working well at all relative to spring. Maybe that was simplicity, but even if you look for yourself, interesting positive effects from a fall application, even with these registered ones. For pyroxasulfone, Eric Johnson, our weed biologist out of Scott, he's been working with the company I can't remember right now, but they have their submission already into Ottawa. So for you growers, it'll be, I believe, just a registration for wheat period, so spring and winter wheat. They're anticipating that they might have that as early as next year. So that's pretty good news. Any questions?
Did you have any fire on
No. FMC is the company. Cold, Gord?
Yeah.
Me too. All right, well, take a look, and then we'll head back to the truck and...
Yeah, actually, the Downy Brome is very visual, and we have had slightly different results based on timing. And I don't know if we ever had a year that was sort of normal, then we might see consistent results. But this year was a really, really late, cold spring, and I noticed very big differences in even growth habit between the Downy Brome and the Japanese Brome. So we're seeing different results based on the timing of application. And when you talk to the chem reps, they'll all tell you that if you want to get good control, you have to time it just properly. The nice thing about the pyroxasulfone is it takes that timing question completely out of it, it seems. So if we had that fall application, no matter what we did, it was always good control. Whereas this year, you'll notice very visually in the Downy Brome side of things, our spring applications, we just didn't hit that level of control that we can. But I'm pretty confident our timing was bang on. But again, we had a different kind of cool spring. Maybe the crop or the weeds just weren't growing like they normally would be that time of year. So that's a cool thing. The other thing I was going to add, just because we're here looking at it and we've got dew drops all over the leaves and we're coming into our flag leaf. On our winter wheat crops, you'll see we're starting to get the leaf disease coming on. So if we're expecting this type of weather to continue, I'd likely be looking at my winter wheat crops and thinking about a fungicide application.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're actually this is probably out of the 3 years, we're probably the cleanest as far as our canopy goes. Contrary, up in central Alberta, I just had an email yesterday. Stripe rust up there is probably the worst they've ever seen in winter wheat, and I'm not sure if that applied to their spring wheat or not. But yeah, if this continues, we could see some buildup. But right now, things are looking pretty clean. What about out? Where's Ryan or Greg? What are you guys seeing for your stuff?
Well, mine's a little slower. Mine's a little smaller than this actually, and it's clean.
Yeah. So yeah, and the interesting thing, like you say about, we've had a range of conditions going into the fall when we did apply pyroxasulfone as that pre-plant, and it never really caused any inconsistency in efficacy or injury or safety. So we're pretty high on that.
Ever have any issues with residue in Everest? Like I know in our area, you guys tried it. It was like 3 years before.
Well, I definitely have heard of that for sure, but we weren't really following the success of crop much to comment on that.
That's what killed us in our area, organic. So
you can see it. Like it would speak to the injury that we did see when we saw it, but it actually did better than I thought it would do. Velocity, and to be fair, velocity isn't something we would recommend anyway. It was probably the most ineffective, but it was safe. If that makes you feel better. But we wouldn't recommend it anyway for brome control. But Simplicity did okay, but this pyroxasulfone, I think we've got something here. So.
For the Simplicity harder on the crop? Than all the others, or?
No, if there was one that really torched it, or was that Simplicity? I think it was Fall Everest probably made the only difference.
Dry falls, we might have seen a touch injury from both Simplicity and Everest.
Yeah.
Last year, I think we had good moisture in the fall, and that's why it was looking
But we never saw any injury really in the spring with anything, even Everest. There was one site here where it got torched in the fall. All right,